Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
Today on the Farm for Fun show from the 2023 Farm Progress Show at the John Deere booth, we are celebrating one of the most iconic pieces of iron and power in the history of ag. It represents the decision to put horses to pasture and replace them with fuel and efficiency. Please help me in celebrating the 100th anniversary of the John Deere Model D, and here to talk about it is Chris Boyens, manager of the Classic Green Collectors Club, and Hans Knudsen, the owner of the Model D that's sitting right here in front of us.
Yes.
Welcome, guys.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
How's the show been so far?
It's been awesome. It's we couldn't ask for better weather to be here, and just the amount of displays and folks running around. It's been a good show.
Yep, never been here before, but wonderful show. Yep.
So let's before we dive into that, let's get a little background of both of you. Let's start with you, Hans. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
From Hutchinson, Minnesota. My brother and I farm. We had about a 1,000-acre farm and corn and soybeans.
Okay.
And my dad kind of got started collecting the old John Deeres in about 1976, and now my sheds are pretty full. So.
Oh, wow.
So you got everything. You got more than just the D.
I got more than just a D. Yeah, I got a D for just about every year. Quite a few other ones, the D Industrial and the Corn Borer and so on, and quite a few other ones too.
Do you have a number? Or is that like asking a man how many acres he farms?
No. It's, I haven't counted lately, but I got close to 50 Ds alone. And
Holy cow.
I've got tractors on 4 different farms, so there's plenty around.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We will dive into that.
Yes, we will.
So, Chris, let's get your background.
Well, I'm originally from the Quad Cities. Was born and raised in Bettendorf, Iowa. Come from a John Deere family. My mother, my aunt, and 2 of my uncles all retired from Deere. I myself am a Deere employee and have just been around this antique stuff since I was about 5 years old, going to shows with my father, and here back in 2017 decided it was time that there was a global John Deere collecting club, and talked to a couple folks into seeing if they would think that was a good idea, and none of them said no. And now we're up over 600 members in 5 different countries, and we just had our 3rd Classic Green reunion down in Lebanon, Tennessee, where we had over 1,100 exhibits and 6,000 attendees. So we're growing strong, and Hans has been a great supporter of us.
Say those numbers again. Over 600 members?
Yes.
In how many countries?
5 countries.
Wow.
So the Classic Green Collectors Club is not what your role is with Deere.
No, I'm actually out of Global Brand and Communications.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's it's just something I've done on the side, and have been a fan of, like I say, all of my life. And it was time there was a group similar to the Red Power group that was for the green side of things, that it was time to have a group that was about the people in this hobby.
Yes.
It's not necessarily the tractors that bring all the people in the hobby together. It's the camaraderie and shared experiences is what it is.
Yep.
So do you yourself have a collection?
Yeah, I've got a few. Nothing near what Hans has. My oldest one is a 1931 GP wide tread. Then I also have a 1937 G, and they're all named. So there's Lucky Rose, and Bubba is my 37 G. Then a 47 G is Barney. And then now I have a 1960 John Deere Lance, D2416 that was built in Mannheim, Germany. That it's Sir Neil Lancelot is its name. So.
I like that. And Hans, I cut you off. You were going to make a comment about the Collectors Club.
Wonderful thing. Yes, just Chris is doing a wonderful job. It's
thank you.
Yep, great thing.
Nice. So as this club has grown, so have the connections, and I assume so has history.
Yes.
It just gets probably more uncovered with the stories and the entire picture that gets told as you guys hang out together.
Exactly, because it's not just the traditional part of collecting has been the two-cylinder era of tractors. Now it's expanded to lawn and garden equipment, to chainsaws, we featured bicycles in Tennessee, the John Deere bicycles. So to hats, memorabilia, toys has been probably one of the biggest growing area that we've had involvement in the reunions. So it's really widened the scope of the hobby. And like I say, it's not just American-built stuff. It's Lance, it's Brazil, it's you name it. Anything and everything to do with John Deere is involved and open to anyone.
Yeah. I'm even in Facebook groups that people are trying to sell and collect old John Deere signs.
Yep.
Just advertising type stuff.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
So if we look at this deer sitting in front of us, do you remember when you bought it?
Yes, very, very clear. Yes,
Okay.
about 4 years ago.
All right.
And auctioned in northwest Iowa. And kind of went there to buy it, which sometimes that's not always a good thing. It kind of empties your pocketbook, but I'm glad I ended up with it.
So what was special about buying this one?
1924, it's pretty tough to find one that's complete and one with most of the correct parts on it. Almost every single piece on a 24D is special to a 24, depending upon the part number, where it is casted in that certain piece. Most of the part numbers, all 2-digit part numbers. So everything is pretty unique on it.
Nice.
How
Is that
many-
one run?
Oh, yes. I backed it up in there, off the trailer.
Very cool.
So it's got steel wheels. The listeners that can't see this, it's on steel wheels. It's not bright John Deere green.
Nope.
It's
It's got
got
patina.
it has patina to it, and it's got the fenders sitting there across. But I'm going to stop describing that and let Hans do a little bit more of a description that makes that tractor special. But I want to know first, Chris, how many years were the D made?
The Ds were introduced in 1923
Okay.
and were produced all the way up to 1953.
Wow.
So they was the longest production run of John Deere tractors for 30 years. And it's just interesting the history of the D is also the history of agriculture. On that dynamic mechanical shift from 1923 to 1953. It was the first time in the United States, was roughly around 1954, that horses were outnumbered by tractors. So imagine buying this mechanical wonder in 1924, what that really meant technology-wise on the farm and how it changed the farmer's life.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you remember what they'd cost in 1924?
They were around $1,000 was about where they were at. So it wasn't an inexpensive venture. But you have to remember it was competing with the Fordson at that time, which was around the $700, $600 range. So it was a fairly expensive tractor
Right.
in its day, but was a much bigger tractor than the Fordson was.
So how does that compare? If we think about that in the realm of perspective, how many horsepower is a D?
This would be 15 horsepower on the drawbar and 27 on the belt pulley.
Okay.
And you don't have to feed those 27
No.
horses.
Nope, and it can work all day, and that was the main thing, was productivity. It was all about productivity, that
Yeah.
you didn't have to rest the horses, you didn't have to pay for feed, and not only did you didn't have to pay for the feed set, is you could redistribute the acreage that you were putting towards feeding your horses to production. So it was a dual-purposed piece.
Right. So Hans, as we sit here, how would you describe that? If someone can't see the tractor right now, how would you put words to it?
Well, when I bought the tractor, it had about 4 layers of paint on it. It had been repainted and repainted and repainted, and I spent hours and hours and hours stripping it back down, being very careful to get it to look the way it is, down to the original paint, what's left of it. Pretty rusty, but there's quite a bit of green on it, and quite a bit of yellow silkscreen on the hood yet. So
It's considered a survivor, is what they would call it in the antique car world, that it was a tractor that's back to what it originally looked like. We call it original work clothes in the tractor hobby part, but they're finally getting their due in
Right.
the hobby. That's what that tractor probably looked like if it wouldn't have had paint on it all of its life.
yeah,
How many Ds were made?
There were roughly 100,000 of the Ds made over that 50-year period or 30-year period.
Yeah, 1929 there was, 20,000 or 21,000 alone.
Yep, alone in 1929. And 1933 was the smallest number made due to Depression era.
Yeah.
So in 23, was there any other tractors that John Deere offered?
Well, in 23, they still would have had the Waterloo Boy.
Okay.
The Waterloo Boy still would have been on the market. It was on the market until 1924. So it would have been competition to it. But there was only in 1923, there was only 50 of them built in 1923. And they're fundamentally the same tractor, radiator differences, front end differences. There's some differences in those first 50. But I think of the original 50, there's 13 of them.
12 that I know
12
of.
or 13 of them still in existence.
So what kind of technological advance would that have given you, a farmer, say from 1922 to 1923?
Well, the difference between a Waterloo Boy and this, a Waterloo Boy was, it would have been an aged design from about 1914. And when we say that, it had open valve train, it had open rear gearing, it had grease cups, it had oilers, everything sat out in the open, so dirt would clog into everything. You'd have to maintain it to where the design on the D is the main case, back is all one piece. So all of your drive gears and everything are internal, running in oil, as well as your drive train or your valve train up front. All the valves are enclosed, rocker arms are enclosed and oiled. So the time on maintenance, the time stopping to push in grease cups, to do all of that was diminished easily.
Yes.
And the size of the D, part of the design was for maneuverability. They were easy to turn quickly, but they could also put these sideways on a rail car.
Ah.
So instead of only getting 3 Waterloo Boys on a rail car, you could get 5 Ds set the opposite direction.
So it's a logistical
It was
thing
not.
too.
It wasn't just production. It wasn't ease
Right.
of operation. It was also logistical. Yep.
So why is the seat so far back? Because to me, it looks like the seat, you're hanging clear off the back of the tractor.
Yes, you are. It's basically the only thing you need to have your feet on is the platform. Everything else you're set out back. Helps with visibility. It just helps keep the tractor compact.
And a lot of times when the farmer was farming, he'd stand up. So when you stood up, there was room there.
Yep.
For you to stand up on the platform.
Yeah. Their Apple Watch would tell them to stand.
That's right. They would. Yep.
Auto track goes out if you don't get up every 6 hours.
Where's the globe go on one of those?
I think you could mount it wherever you wanted. I'm not sure it'd do much good, but
And it's gas, correct?
Yes.
Gas powered?
Well, yeah, all fuel. Yep. So it would actually burn low grades of fuel like distillate or that's why there's 2 fuel tanks on it. The little cap in the center of the hood is for pure gas. So you could start it up, get the engine warmed up. Once it's good and warm, you could switch it over to the distillate or low-grade fuel, and it was hot. The engine was hot enough where it would keep running and burn it, which would be quite a bit cheaper to burn.
Huh.
What would have been the main job for that tractor? Was it tillage?
Plowing,
plowing,
spring
belt
disking,
work.
yep, threshing grain on the belt, yep,
Very cool.
yeah.
Yeah, because I just would assumed it did everything, right? It's not, probably wouldn't be nearly as handy around the front yard as a shuttle shift tractor is right now, but
Right. Cultivating, it would have been rear cultivator
Okay.
on it. Otherwise, it wouldn't. It's not set up for row crop design.
Does it have a transmission?
Yep, 2 speeds, slow and slower.
Slow and slower. How do you drive it? I don't even know how to drive the thing.
There's a hand clutch.
Okay.
Forward is obviously
Engage.
yep, and you snap it back, and then that stop, and then 2 gears. There's a shift lever between your legs there.
Yep.
And then it's got a reverse, and then it's got 2 small short levers besides the clutch handle, which one is a throttle for the engine RPM, and the other one is for starting. When you start it, you retard the spark, and then start it so it don't kick back. Once it's running, you advance the spark so it would run a little bit better. So yeah, that's pretty simple.
Yeah, the hand clutch was what Ryan Kelly said was easier operation for
For
a
young,
small child, or not
young
a child,
kid,
or,
yeah.
a teenager. A lot easier than that Fordson clutch. They couldn't
Exactly.
get in.
Oh, yeah. Sit on an Alice Chalmers once.
So when they were doing tillage, what would this be? A two-bottom plow? Pull a
Three bottom.
Okay.
In our land in Minnesota, three 14s would be fine. Yep.
Okay.
What kind of acreage could a guy get done in a day with this?
On plowing wise,
15,
I
20
was going to say
acres.
15, 20 acres if put in a
Big day.
good day.
Wow.
15, 20 acres.
Could almost plow your backyard.
It would probably get, I don't know, it'd probably take a lot more turning around than what I would really want to do because it's got no power steering.
Oh, no. Armstrong.
Now, did they end up power steering before the Ds were done being made, or
No,
were they all?
They did not. The first line would have been the what we called the early 10 series, so like the 50s, 60s, 70s. Those had factory power steering.
So you're saying when the D came out, there wasn't the A and the B?
No.
So why was it called the John Deere D?
Well, there's a number of theories on that. In doing the research, there was an A that they did. It started out as the bathtub, what they called the bathtub, because the main case resembles a bathtub when it's open. And all of that started roughly around 1917. So the number of years of experimentation, there was an A, there was a talk with a C. There wasn't really a C ended up being a completely different tractor, but then they ended up with a 1, a 2, and then it went to a 3. Then all that shows up is Model D. So in the registry, it shows up Model D, and I'm just pretty sure that someone said, hey, we already tried A, we don't like B, C is something that isn't in there, we're going with D.
It's not like there was a David or somebody
No.
that it was named after for
Not
engineering.
that we have found in any of the literature.
Well, we could start that rumor.
D for dirty. I don't.
So how soon after this did the next model of John Deere tractor come out?
The next model would have come out was the Model C
Okay.
that came out late 1927, 1928.
Okay, so not too far along.
Not too far along, and it was a smaller size tractor, and it was intended for row crop purpose. But the confusion came in, especially in the time of telegraphs. If you were ordering parts or ordering a tractor to say I'm ordering a D or a C was too confusing, so they ended up calling the C the general purpose or the GP. So that's what started distinguishing the line between the standard line of John Deere's and the general purpose line of John Deere's. So yes, the C became the first of the general purpose line.
You said telegraph, and that made me kind of think of wartime, and I know that John Deere had a lot of influence on the war. Was the D ever used in wartime applications?
The D was generally not used in any wartime applications. There were a few instances where Deere looked at producing some versions of tractors for war use. They were miserable at it, and Deere pretty much told Deere to stick with building farm equipment to help feed everyone. But we did build other things for the war effort. The Iowa Tank Transmission Company built tank transmissions. Ottumwa built some airplane parts. Harvester built airplane parts. Some mobile wash units, and M1 cleat track. Deere helped put those together, but they thought it was more important that Deere put out good quality farm equipment to help raise food.
I just would assume that the tractors would have been used to pull supplies through, fields and whichever.
I don't know. Not when it's slow and slower.
Enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Slower and slower doesn't help.
That's right. They definitely were slow and slower.
So Hans, how do you keep? You have a bunch of tractors. How do you keep them in condition? Because I know you can't just let them sit there, right?
I got a shed with a wood floor, which is good for humidity and damp air, and I keep them coated pretty heavy with WD-40.
Okay.
Oh, really?
I buy that by the gallons and gallons.
So what is the gamut of your collection? I guess give us a little snippet of that.
Well, I got a D for just about every year.
Okay.
And they're all in their original work clothes, which they're not. They haven't been restored. Just maybe been touched up, painted here and there, or whatever. But most of them are pretty rusty, and that's the way I enjoy to have them. So.
And they all run?
Just about all of them run. I got a couple of them in the shop that I'm working on now that I'm trying to save.
So when you say trying to save, what makes a tractor not salvageable?
Well, when they're completely used up, engines wore out, transmissions wore out, sheet metal's all banged up, and it's just too hard to fix. But when you find one that the last one that I picked up was the 34th style D built in 1939, which makes it pretty special. And there wasn't much left of it, but I'm going to rebuild the whole thing and start from scratch and build the whole thing up.
So when you need parts for that, are you fabbing those up yourself? Does John Deere still make some of that?
Yeah, John Deere still supplies some of the parts for it, but there's a lot of salvage yards and places to get used parts. And when you want to replace a hood or a radiator and you're keeping them in original condition, you kind of got to find one that the patina is the same and matches it. Makes it very challenging to find something to match.
So is D the only thing you collect?
No, I've got GPs, I got A's, I got B's.
Is it your favorite?
Oh, definitely. My favorite is a D, definitely. I've got an 80-20, which there's one sitting over there on the next aisle, and they only build 100 of those, so that's pretty special too. So that's one of my favorites also.
Do you have one that you're hot to chase after? Is there another D for your collection?
Well, I'd love to find a 23, but there's only 12 of those around that I know of.
Wow.
So it's that's going to be a tough one.
Out of, what'd you say, there's 50?
50 total.
50
And
of
there's
the
only
1923s.
23 left?
12.
12.
Yeah, it's
Get my
25%-ish.
Wow.
Yeah.
12 that you know of.
12 that I know of.
But there could be one sitting out there in the weeds somewhere.
Yeah, if anybody finds them, send them our way. If they find any 23s,
Our listeners
give us
are pretty
a call
good at
first.
finding stuff.
I had a friend call me the other day, and he was all excited. He's down in Texas, and he said they had supposedly had found one, and they were going to look. And, well, no, it wasn't a 23 when they got there.
Oh, no.
How do you tell what year it is?
Well, a serial number on the back. That's pretty obvious. The radiator, they kind of nicknamed with a ladder side. There's notches cutting in the side of the radiator.
Yep.
The front axle is very visible, where this is all solid. On a 23, they're made of flat iron, and it's kind of got a webbing in it. So, I mean, you can see that a long ways away.
A tractor nerd can spot it
Yeah.
from over 50 feet away.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So these tractors were $1,000 roughly? New?
Roughly.
Give or take. Probably went up as time went on. But what would something like that take to buy it at auction today?
Depends on who's selling, how
That's
much
right.
you got. I'll sell it to you right now.
If you ask me, there's a 9RX sitting right there.
Yeah.
And if you said I could have one of them, I would take my D home.
You're crazy.
Really?
No, I'm not. Well, I am crazy, but
How much
a
did you pay?
relative
How much did you pay
question.
for it? Or is that
it was between 30 and 40,000.
okay?
And I stuck quite a bit into it.
Sure.
So
Well, let's see, the last 24 that sold brought, was it 100
100 and some thousand.
140, 130?
And I don't want to knock it down, but there was a lot of parts on it that were not correct at all. No.
Yeah.
No.
That's the interesting thing about all worlds of collection is the amount of original that you can have included. You wouldn't think.
Yep.
It's there. It should work, but there's a lot of credibility that comes with something being all original.
Definitely. Yeah.
They're only original ones.
So you don't have anything that's been repainted up to just showroom quality? Take
I
it to
had,
the
I had a
state fair?
couple. I had a couple, and I took them to auction and sold them.
Okay.
Yep.
They're harder to maintain.
Oh yeah.
The paint starts to deteriorate once they come out of the...
Oh, yeah, he used WD-40. Just
Yeah.
probably put it in a knapsack sprayer and just walk through the barn.
Flip the toolbox up. Cans in the toolbox.
So how often do you have to do that?
Oh, I drove down here in the rain, so a lot of rain. And, well, not heavy rain, but a lot of misty rain. And, it kind of dried it out a little bit, so I misted it up. But, like, when they sit in my shed, maybe once a year. And it maybe attracts a little bit of dust, but maybe every spring I'll go in there with the garden hose. I'll just rinse them all up. Well, it just beads up like wax, and then maybe give them another coat.
Yep.
So easy to maintain. Very, very easy to maintain.
You should start with your 8345 RT and just start WD-40.
Well, I got a question about that. Like, So did Deere ever become self-aware that they might be collectible and then start like peeling a couple off the line and just never running them?
For archival sake, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
At what point would that happen?
Really, the archival buildup didn't happen until '87 with the 150th anniversary, to where things became cognizant of, hey, there's some value to this stuff.
Right.
So
we're in the manufacturing business, not in the
Collecting.
record keeping or collecting business.
Right, but it's also history.
Yep.
Oh, definitely.
So you're saying since 1987, every year, there's a couple of them pulled off, and
Not necessarily. That's just when we became cognizant of it.
Yeah.
Was '87. In the collection, we don't have a lot of firsts in the John Deere collection. We do have a number of things that were pulled off. But you can imagine if we started doing that with 9RXs, it wouldn't take long to fill up everything underneath the sun.
I mean,
it'd be pretty expensive.
what do
Yeah.
you think the last collectible tractor is?
Right now, guys are collecting the 60 series stuff. I mean, they're into that really hard right now. So, which
I feel like there's almost a collector's aspect to the 30 series, like the 84 30s, just more of a working collection.
Yeah, they're still using them.
Yep.
That's a usable. I feel like maybe you get into like the 8300s. Maybe some guys are, but
guys are still using 4020s.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
that's the hard part. We did the 50th anniversary, which is hard to say for the 30 series Gen 2 stuff. That makes it hard for me to say it because that means I'm 50 years old. So that makes it hard. But having that featured at our Classic Green Reunion in Tennessee, guys were like, I'm still using the thing. It works every day. I said, well, all I ask you is just hose off the manure before you bring it to the show.
Right.
So the collecting ranges so far from what guys are doing, but it surprises me every day that they keep moving ahead.
right. I know we still use our 4020 with a loader on it, almost daily on the
Yeah,
farm.
Yeah.
As we were talking about that before we came up, I said the 4020 is John Deere's 57 Chevy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
72 4020 diesel power shift. What's besides the D being one of the first iconic, the most that we made was the Model Bs. So yeah, those I'd say are our top, are at least top three best tractors.
See, I'm partial to the 4000 because that's what I grew up with.
Yes. My dad bought a 4000 in 1972, and we still farm with it.
Yeah, it's still our loader
Oh, yeah.
tractor. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a load of one of ours, too.
But I like the synchro transmission because I can be in fifth and I can just go to fifth reverse rather than having to come down and over
Yep.
and back up again and over. That was faster for me, clearing out hog sheds, pushing snow, whatever it was. I pretty much just lived in fifth gear.
And for the collectors, the 4000s are more sought after than the 4020s just because of the numbers.
Yeah, especially
Oh, no.
power shift.
Yep,
There
Power
wasn't very
Shift
many of those.
4000s. Power Shift 4000 gas.
Ooh.
There you go.
So if we go back to when this D would have come out, we were replacing horses.
Yep.
Yes.
And what was the largest plow that was pulled by horses, a team of horses?
Depends on how many horses you had.
Yeah.
But
If you're saying
that's
a
what I
team
mean.
like two,
Well,
then
that's- yeah, I
you're
guess
looking
I was
at
thinking of a
two-bottom
team as
sulky.
in it could be multiple, but
You had gang plows. You could put as many platform gang plows as
Oh,
you
yeah.
could together, and that's where Deere really first connected with the tractor world was in 1909 with the gas traction Big 430 at the Winnipeg plowing competitions in Canada. They teamed it with a double gang Deere plow and won the competition. So Deere's like, maybe we can connect this tractor a little bit more to our equipment. But then it took them from that time until 1918 to get really into the full-fledged into the tractor business.
right. So when this tractor came out, there had to be a whole nother line of plows that came out.
Oh, yes.
At the same time, was there a whole line of implements that came?
Prior to that, we were heavy into well, that's how Deere got started, was with the plow. But yeah, we were heavy into the implement business, and it just got to the point that we could no longer separate the plow from the tractor and had to make it a full, what we'd call full line manufacturer. So yeah, it was the D did have some specific equipment designed for it, but it was in a myriad
Right.
of other offerings.
But if I sold my horses and upgraded to a D, would I have been able to use the same tillage tools that I had in the field?
Cut the beam off and put a hitch on it.
Huh.
You could, but it could handle much more than what that
Sure.
team could handle.
Wow.
Was there any other off? I'm trying to think of the word. Like you get into orchard tractors or things like that. Was there any other models of the special models of the D?
Oh, I've got a D Industrial, which is called a DI.
And what would that do?
What's different?
Maintain roads, faster gear, or it had smaller sprockets in the rear end, so it would go faster.
So it had like a blade
Heavier
that it would
draw
pull
bar.
on a road? Or,
Yeah.
Scrapers.
Yep. Some of them had the PTOs where they would run they called them a road patrol grader you could run from the tractor seat.
did they paint that Deere construction yellow?
I believe they,
It was Deer
Yeah,
Yellow.
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But that was, of course, back in the early days when we were in partnership with Caterpillar.
Okay.
So it was matched with Caterpillar road equipment.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Yep.
I didn't know Deere had a partnership with Caterpillar.
And that's where we got our Hillside Combine, was from Caterpillar from Holt.
Wow. Interesting.
I kind of want to dive deeper, but that
Well, let's do that. But after, is there any other special?
lots of them. I've got a corn borer D.
What's that?
Okay. 1927, the government was getting into trouble with corn borer infestations in your cornfields.
Yes.
So they bought
440
440 Ds from John Deere and McCormick Deerings and Fordsons. And they would go around and chop the stalks in the field and help plow to try to control it, which probably didn't work out real well, but that was their idea of
Like a government eradication program, kind of?
Yeah, and the silk screen said corn borer patrol on top of the hood, and then they all had a U.S. government number on the radiator and hood and the valve cover.
Were those painted a different color?
No, they were John Deere green also.
Okay.
Yep.
But there were a number of variations, like Hans was saying. There's Spoker Ds alone. There's the 23 spokers. There's the 24, which are the 26-inch flywheel spokers. Then in 25, they went to a 24-inch. Mm-hmm. And then you have the nickel hole flywheel Ds after that, which they went to a solid flywheel with a very small hole in it. And that was all to help reduce stress on the flywheel from cracking. Then after that, they went into the early unstyleds. And then multiple years set through, and then in 1938 they went to a style D, and then the style Ds ran till 1953, and then the last of when the D was replaced by the Model R, Deere's first two-cylinder diesel and first diesel tractor. They found out when they introduced the R in 1949 that there was still a demand for the D. And in 52, they said, we're going to cut the D off. Well, they found out that all the branch houses were like, we can sell more Ds. Well, they found enough parts to make roughly 92 of them in the street on in the factory, and they call them Streeter Ds.
Streeter Ds.
That they put together after their end of the official end of the D run.
So are those highly collectible?
Very, very highly collectible. Yeah,
Yes.
there's not very many of them left.
wow.
You got any of those?
No, I don't have a streeter.
He needs a straighter and he needs a 23.
Yes.
Bookends, beginning and end.
Yep.
Boy.
Cool. So let's dive into the Caterpillar thing. I've never heard that before. What's the story there?
It was just an agreement that Cat was never into wheeled tractors. Deere was looking to get into the construction end of things and was heavy into the harvesting side of things. In fact, the Model R that I mentioned was specifically designed as a wheeled version of a D4 Cat. So if you look at the spec sheet of a D4 Cat and a Model R, they're exactly the same. So the idea was that they could sell an R with whatever you needed in areas that a crawler couldn't do it, and vice versa. We even had joint dealerships that were Caterpillar and John Deere. Well, Deere getting full into the construction business kind of put an end to that, which wasn't any different with Deere getting into the harvesting business in 1912, making IH get into the plow industry with P&O. Mm-hmm. So it's just part of the business of becoming a full line equipment manufacturer.
Right. That's just part of the history of any business. Like, I mean, we saw the same with Sukup manufacturing and grain bins. They used to just supply the fans and all that stuff, and then
now they build bins.
And now they build bins. So that's just how business goes.
So what's the next birthday? What's the next anniversary that we get to celebrate for Deere tractors?
Well, I know 24 doesn't have a lot, but 25 is going to be 24, I take that back. 24 is going to be the 90th of the A when it comes to antique stuff. So that's one that I'm cognizant of is the A, and then the B in 35, and also the DIs started in 35.
Okay.
There's a number of anniversaries that we're going to be hitting.
Yeah, you'd imagine
Coming
on
up.
a fifth year, 2025, would catch a lot of different anniversaries.
Yeah, it just all depends on what the guys are collecting and what they want to see. So the A was what we called a first successful row crop. The GP wide tread was not as successful, but yeah, the Model A was one of our first successful row crop tractors.
Oh, because the D wasn't considered row crop.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, it's just like having this 9RX, which is mainly going to be used for tillage and grain cart operation, not going to fit down 30-inch rows.
But they do have a row crop version.
But they do have a row crop version. Yeah. That's interesting. So the whole time that the D was in production, was it the largest horsepower tractor?
No, not in Deere's line. Yes,
in Deere's
but
line,
not in the industry. But yes, it was our big granddaddy. In that time was the largest tractor we had.
Wow.
So this has steel wheels on it. When did rubber come into the factor?
About 1932, you could first start ordering
Out of the factory?
Out of the factory with rubber. 35, 36 probably got quite a bit more common.
Yeah, 35 was the main instance of it. And you that's when you get round spokes, and those are there's a BR over here just beautiful BR that has round spokes and rubber on it.
We got to get out and walk around, go see this stuff.
Can you start it for us when we're done? Or is that not allowed?
If they want me to, I sure would. We'll have to go get some gas, but I'll start it right up.
I didn't even think about that. You probably don't keep your tractors with much fuel in them.
I drain the gas out of this just to be safe here.
Oh, smart guy.
Yep.
No. Well, we won't make you do
Well, we
that.
can wait till Thursday.
There's no ignition key.
Oh, so anyone could start it.
That's
So if
fuel.
you knew what you were doing,
If you knew what you were doing, you could start it.
It wouldn't be me.
It's like those pulling tractors over there outside of Sukup. I didn't realize that those guys just could hop up on there and start it. I looked over there, and Tony Reed was sitting in the seat, got it fired up. And who gave him permission to do this?
Yep.
No, this is exciting for me just to learn right alongside Corey about the history of the D, because there's probably so much history that could go missed or lapsed if it wasn't for the collectors club that you're a part of, or even just those that collect and preserve history.
Yep. And it's just the experience and delving into it. And like I said, the tractor nerd part of it, that you want to know more about it. You want to know, well, why was this way? When did they change this? How many of these did they make? You know, that's all part of it. Some people do it with baseball cards and other stuff. We just do it with antique equipment.
Yeah.
What do you think the highest sought-after tractor, John Deere tractor, is for collectors?
Well,
I got to describe this, because if you're not watching on YouTube, you need to be watching this, because when Corey asked that question, both Hans and Chris went with almost the biggest shoulder size of. Boy, I don't know if I've ever been asked a question that's harder than this one.
80-20 would be right up there.
80-20 would be, to my part, is what was called the John Deere all-wheel drive, is one of the holy grails. There's 2.5 of those, and it's more than a half now because it's being rebuilt.
Yes. Yep.
It's gaining.
But there were roughly 94 of them built prior to Deere purchasing, in development prior to Deere purchasing Waterloo Boy. Some of them call them the Dane, but it was a John Deere all-wheel drive. That those are few and far between. But yeah, 80-20 is highly sought after. The Model Cs are highly sought after.
A 23D.
23Ds. You get into the newer collectors, they're trying to find the stuff that there was, one of 28 built. So if you're looking like a 4430 narrow front gas, stuff like that there wasn't, the production wasn't there. Anything they didn't make a lot of or wasn't a success at some point will be highly collectible because no one else has it. And hence the GP, we always joke about that it was a flop at the time, but now it's one of the highest demand of the two cylinders.
Nice.
Guess it's kind of like a silver lining for sucking. Right?
Eventually it'll be worth something.
Yeah.
But we knew we were going to be sitting here for our recordings. We knew that this was going to be a feature of the event. I'm not going to lie. When I walked in yesterday to set up, I expected to see a shiny D. But after listening to you guys, that's not true history. That's not the work clothes, like you said. So it's kind of fascinating to hear your story, and I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes, well, thank you. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, this is the hardest part. We ask all of our guests the same question. We love putting a compilation episodes together with different perspectives. So you both will get to answer the same question, and I promise it's not too hard.
Okay.
We are currently asking, what either do you enjoy most about farming or enjoy most about working with farmers?
Well, when I was born, my mom did a lot of the farming. She drove the tractors. And when I was tiny, I would lay on the floor under her feet. And I just grew up farming, and I enjoy every day of it. This summer, we haven't had any rain up in Minnesota, hardly, where we're at. So it's a little depressing, but I still enjoy it. So just love it.
Yeah.
For me, I'd say it's my grandfather. That's part of why I do all of it.
Yeah.
Is to connect my grandfather with my son and someday with his son. That's what's in our blood. That just something you can't get out of it. I wasn't raised on the farm. I was first generation off the farm. But my grandfather and picking up corn with him as a kid, it's just who we are.
Right.
All right, I got one more. I always do.
Go right
always
ahead.
do. It's for Hans. If someone's wanting to get into collecting tractors, what's the best way to find them?
Oh, boy. Auctions.
There's a lot of auctions.
There's a lot of auctions. Auctions are always good. It's getting word of mouth is good. Once you start letting people know you're looking for something, I got a lot of friends that find stuff all over for me.
And I would say if you're new at a show or going to where collectors are and explaining that, hey, I'd like to get into this, most of them can either help you find one. And to me, buying one off of an auction, there's not as much of a story as it than buying it from the guy that's had it. And most of the time, especially with younger collectors, our guys are more than willing to take them under their wing and say, here you go. And even in part of our projects that we do at Classic Green, we've partnered with 3 FFA groups that someone has donated a piece of equipment. We're right now doing a BN and a 110 lawn and garden tractor that the FFA groups are restoring, and we will raffle off to people. So that gets other people interested in it and gets other people interested in it. I think it's just showing an interest with the right folks that are willing to help and support you.
So I got questions that breed questions, so I got another one.
Sure.
It just comes, So you got a lot of these. Why? Why not just one or two? Why so many? Is it a retirement package?
I'm definitely not in it to make money.
Okay.
I've actually sold quite a few of my new generations. It's a lot of upkeep on them, so I have sold quite a few. But you just can't have one. It's like
it's a disease.
It is, yeah.
We call it a green disease.
Yeah, I believe green.
You get one and you're like, ooh, there's a different version of it. Ooh. Or it's like, I got my 37 first year G, and I'm like, ooh, now I need an early style G. Ooh, now I need a So
It's never ending.
But 30, 40 grand for something like that is, it's not like you're just going to spend $300-400.
Well, there's some you can buy for $300-400.
Yeah,
Okay.
there are.
I bought one a couple days ago for $250.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Nice.
That's my kind of collection.
Yeah.
And your insurance, does it insure all that if one of your sheds goes up? Or how does that work?
If a tornado or whatever came, it's gone.
It survived the tornado.
It would
I'm
probably,
not talking
yeah. I mean,
about.
look, it's been through everything else.
That's fair.
But no,
Fire would
I'm,
not be
the
good.
WD-40 would keep it away.
I'm not a big insurance believer. So.
Okay. Self-insured.
There you go. Great. Gentlemen, this has been a pleasure. I'm glad we had the opportunity to do this. And like I
you
said,
for
to
having
share a
us.
piece of the history. I know we didn't get it all, but I think our listeners are also going to appreciate that as well.
Yep.
Well, thank you. So, Corey, what do you say?
Crack a bush light. You deserve
Yeah.
it.